Dimitris Skleparis, who joins us live from Newcastle in the UK. He's a politics and security lecturer at the University of Newcastle. Great to have you on the show. First of all, we've just been talking about these black sites that have been reported in the New York Times. What do you make of this?
Hello from Newcastle. Yeah, this is a very concerning development. Unfortunately, for me, the whole discussion has to do with the fact that there is a total suspension of the rule of law at the moment at the Greek-Turkish border, and the problem here has to do with the fact that the whole discussion and the whole narrative has to do more with what is just in a war situation, rather than what has to be done under the European Convention of Human Rights, for example. So for me, where this problem starts is the initial framing of the situation. And the framing of the situation is basically as an asymmetrical threat, as the Prime Minister said, and it's being dealt with under these kinds of conditions and circumstances.
People are people, refugees, migrants, whether it's war or a different situation, the right to asylum, what does the law say?
Absolutely, and this is the main problem. The main problem is that human beings are treated inhumanely. Human beings are being used as pawns in power politic games. And the main issue is how to stop this from happening and also to come up with a solution to what's happening in Syria. If these two things are not resolved, I think that unfortunately the future is bleaker for people at the Greek-Turkish border.
Dimitris, there is an EU delegation travelling to Greece today. Do you think they have a plan that can solve what is happening at the border?
So what is different from what was happening in 2015, 2016 is basically that now Europe speaks with one voice, and it's the voice that is restrictive to migration. It's restrictive towards receiving more new arrivals, more new asylum seekers.
Sorry to interrupt you, Dimitris. Europe speaks with one voice with regards to migrants.
Exactly.
Many people would question that because look at the situation, say, in Libya, look at the migrant ships, look at the situation in Greece. Do you really think the EU speaks with one voice and has a coordinated voice and plan?
Yes, because there is much resistance from the majority of EU member states towards sharing the responsibility of what's happening at the external borders of the EU. I think this is the main problem, that there is no mechanism in place to enforce all EU member states to participate in sharing responsibility of what's happening. So eventually, what's happening is passing the buck to countries at the external borders of the EU, being EU member states or being non-EU member states like Turkey, for example, or like Libya.
So you would say they are passing the buck, you would agree. For example, Libya is outsourcing of the refugee crisis, those poor migrants that go around and around for days in detention camps, and the situation in Turkey, 4 million refugees without the help that they were promised.
Absolutely. This is the main problem. Whereas, for example, the difference between what's happening in Libya and what's happening in Turkey, the main difference is that Turkey is next to an active war zone, so there is no option for Turkey to pass the buck to anybody, essentially. Whereas in Libya, Libya tries to pass the buck further down with the assistance, of course, of the EU. So you see that these kinds of buffer zones between the EU and the south are being extended further to the south, such as in Niger, for example, in Africa.
Dimitris, it's been a real pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much. Dimitris Skleparis from Newcastle University. Thank you.